ready.
Wow, that's Nikki B. Welcome to the Smart Houses podcast, where we talk about entrepreneurship, self-development, and challenging norms. I haven't seen the rat skeller yet, dude. Look at her.
Dude, the rat scallion back here, baby. Look at that. Watch us on YouTube.
No, don't turn it on YouTube.
We got the forest shrimp mullet rocking and rolling.
Oh, dude.
Look at that.
I thought we were going to try and sell down in Miami.
We are. I just got to put some product in it,
one's
Pop. I haven't gotten a
that.
shower. I have to apologize. I think we noise.
Well, for anyone that doesn't speak Theo Von, it's all right. You got 25% uploaded. It's totally cool.
Hold on. I'm going to switch Wi-Fi. Tell them about Theo Von, Pop.
Well, for those of you that don't speak Theo Von, who is one of our idols, actually, I've been watching a lot of Shane Gillis. Shane Gillis and Theo Von, they have a great podcast together, a couple episodes, actually. And then you go down the rabbit hole. Shane Gillis, he's got a great stand-up comedy special. But Theo Von, he speaks in this forest shrimp language. We're referring to Belky's mullet. He's mulleted out because we're trying to set an unbelievable precedent down in the tech nerd Miami and let him know who's the big dog. So, hey, that's the All-In Summit that I'm referring to, by the way.
Just inside jokes around here. Monday inside jokes.
How about that? Hey, Belky, you want to take a guess what we're going to talk about today?
I got no clue. All I know is I'm on this roof in the middle of San Francisco because I couldn't find a quiet place in this WeWork, and you know I'm not going to pay $20 more for an office. You know it.
That's the value of our audience. We got to get a Patreon or something so we can at least see some money coming in from it. No, it don't matter. We don't need to monetize ever. We're going to keep recording these to the day one of us dies. And my mom is scared to quit her job. Okay, my mom got another job, and she's scared to quit her current job because she'll lose health insurance for like a week. And she's like, Dylan, you go on late night walks and it's dark out and you wear all black. I can't have a week without an insurance policy. Because you know I'm under 26 and I get that Obamacare. Hey,
the things she does for you.
Here's what's going on. Basically, every morning I go for a walk. I listen to some things. I was listening to Shane Gillis and what is his name? Louis C.K. They're talking about the presidents, like every president throughout history. I know you hate history, but at some point I'm going to do a breakdown because they're like the drunk history, which I always wanted to be, just like drunk history personified, just like that as a character. And they do a great job of just like making history fun, like Churchill. Like, yeah, dude, Churchill was just a fat nerd. And FDR and Stalin, they were at it was like Yalta conference or something. And Stalin's like Russia, like they're badass, and like everyone was trying to break through to him. And Churchill and FDR, like Churchill sucked up to FDR. He's like, oh, he's the dude. I love him. And so he's like, yo, how do we get Stalin on our side? And FDR's like, yo, dude, I got it. Like, just don't worry about it at this like lunch conference or whatever. And Churchill's like all nervous and stuff, but he's like, all right, FDR's the boy. He's got it in the bag. So at lunch, FDR just goes to Stalin. He's like, yo, Stalin, like, look over at Churchill. Look how fat, little stubby fingers. Look at him right now. He's got his little cigar. He's so chubby and thinks he's smart. And then Stalin just fucking loses it. And now they're just all boys because they shit all over Churchill. And it's like,
was this real or stand up?
No, this was a podcast talking about history. This was a real event in history.
That was a real event?
This actually, I guess it was Yalta conference. I was kind of walking, so I wasn't like taking notes or anything. Yalta conference.
Did they take liberties with the fat fingers?
No, I think he actually just shit on him. And that's how he like cracked Stalin. Because like everyone in Russia, like they don't laugh, like they're super serious. He's like, yo, I'm going to break him. I'm going to get him on our side. And wow. I guess it was right after the war or something like that. Or
I have a question, Pop. If history is so fun, why do we got to make it all drunk history fun?
What do you mean?
If history were such a fun
This is my co-host.
if
Tartamuda, dude.
If history were such a fun thing, why do we have to make it silly?
No, it's not that fun. It's the people
Oh.
that tell the story that make it fun. Like
Oh,
you
so
could
the
tell
story is
Andrew
fun.
Jackson as like, for example, I've been getting in a lot of like radicalization feuds with my friends, and I'm like, oh, I have a certain sense of humor, and they don't. Like Andrew Jackson, you could tell the story of Andrew Jackson. He was back, I don't know, like 1820 or so. He was president, and he like murdered a bunch of Indians, and he was just terrible on this Trail of Tears, and just a horrible person. But they're like, nah, dude, he was the first Trump. Like he just came in, he was just the populist, he was just the people's dude, and I don't know, they just made it funny. Like you can tell the sad, like I actually got a book, Howard Zinn's, what the fuck is it called? Like People's
Howard
History. I don't
Zinn's
know what
good.
it is. You could tell like the sad version of the PC stuff, or you could like still talk about those events but make them kind of like funny, like joking about like 9/11. Those sort of that's what I find funny. I'm like, hey, it happened, it sucks, but like whatever. Okay, that's not the point. Any of this is not the point. History is dope. I want to tell some like president stories with a little bit more research.
Karma's gonna catch you, and you're just gonna be on the Trail of Tears one day all alone, crying.
And I'll probably be sad.
East to west.
It was a rough place out there, dude. But I mean, he did a good job if he was trying to make it sad. So I'm not going to talk about that. But like, I go on this walk and I try and think of some topics. The topic today, this came up. I go through my list of notes. This came up the other day. I was looking in Twitter, and I saw this list of like tech companies and their revenues. And this was in 2020. And it's like, the first tech company was like $30 billion was Tesla. And then right after that, at like 25 billion was Netflix. And then right after that was AirPods at 23 billion.
Yeah.
It's like,
I saw that.
If AirPods was its own company, it'd be like the size of Netflix. And it's like, AirPods,
Pretty
these little
fucking
dinky
unbelievable.
things. And yeah, right. We both got them in right now. I think they sell like, I don't know, 100 million plus pairs a year. Like it's nuts. And it just came out of nowhere. Like everyone, I remember seeing people in the street in New York and be like, oh, look at those fucking weird ass, like long dangly things. They look stupid. But it's like you ever see the meme, or not the meme, the video of the guy dancing, like the one guy dancing in the park. And it's like, oh, that's a weirdo just dancing by himself. But then like another person joins and it's like two people dancing. It's like, oh, that's kind of like, that's funny now rather than just weird. And like three people and everyone just starts dancing within like 30 seconds. It was like that with AirPods. And that's why they're would be as big as Netflix if they were their own company. So I'm like, all right, what do you got, Tartamuda?
I'm curious what the margins are. Is that publicized?
Well, that's the thing. I've been getting into it, and I'm like, the technology in these things is so insane. And like literally, you see an AirPod like this, but 90% of it is just battery. And like all the actual technology is like the size of, I don't know, a fingernail. It's absurd how small it is. So I don't know their actual margins, but I assume they're fantastic because.
And I prefer them, and I think they're better than my expensive Bose noise canceling headphones. Thiener at her new job, she had the option, or she can like request to get gear for the job. She was asking me like, do I go Bose or do I go AirPod? And I was like, honestly, 80-20, I'm all AirPod almost all the time. Unless they're out of battery, then I go to Bose. So they're tiny. The noise cancellation's insane, I think, because it goes in your ear too, and the sound's good.
Yeah. So I'm like, okay, these are brilliant. I use them literally. I think I have them in my ears like 5 hours a day. It's probably like my most used tech thing. So I'm like, okay, how the fuck do they work? Like,
That's where we're going.
That's what I want. I'm like, teach it to me like I'm 5. I don't know what today's episode is supposed to be, but
explain the AirPod like I'm 5. That is what today is. I was worried.
Is it really?
I was worried. Yes.
Hey, look at that. Just happened to happen. Okay. So like before getting into AirPods, which is like the pinnacle of modern technology, I'm like, let me just understand how like headphones work, like music works. Like, how do we take this fucking Kanye in a studio and then give it to me and I can play it and like hear it just with wired headphones? Like, how does that work? Okay. So the first kind of idea you got to wrap your head around is that, okay, what is like sound? Sound is just this.
Oh, wow. What is sound on the Smart Nonsense podcast? Wow.
Well, sound. Hey, I've just researched it for about an hour, so you're gonna get like the most unqualified 30-minute rant on like how AirPods work. But okay, sound is a wave, and like it's just emitting this wave out, and basically like the wave will look different if you ever like zoom in on an MP3 file or just some song. You can see like the wave is like a bunch of fucking, I don't know, just different levels and stuff like that. And all these different levels means different pressure that's going through. And your eardrum is like, oh, I feel the different pressure, like based on the different waves. And then your brain just turns that into sound. Like that's how all of I don't know, the animal kingdom works. So
That's how the animal kingdom works.
Dude.
I am 5. Hey, it's a compression wave. So it's hitting all the air particles in front of it.
Right.
But yeah, you're doing great, Pop. High pressure, low pressure.
Well, I also, we're going to get into like noise cancellation a little bit, but that's like, these waves are like high and low pressure. And so, hey, we're going to save that for later.
I didn't know we were coming for physics. I'm stoked, dude. You do history, I do physics. This is a sweet treat.
You're going to have to correct me a lot because I don't know where we're at, but we get some history crossover too. Okay. So now we can get these sound waves and we're like, okay, that's kind of cool. That's the science of how sound works. How do we transmit that? Well, let's turn this information, these sound waves into
fuck. Sorry. The wind took my opal.
Let's turn these sound waves into computer speak. What do computers speak? Computers are basically light switches. They're ones or zeros, up or down. Like, what do you want? It's like, okay, we're going to turn this sound wave into a bunch of ones and zeros. And somehow that's going to transmit information to our eardrums, to our brain. And we're going to be like, oh, that's Kanye. He's dope. Okay, how do we do that? Well, the way they do that is they take the sound wave and they put it on a little chart. And so the chart, like you ever see an XY axis and it's got all those like little interval points and going up and down. Like, okay, on the X axis, that's basically the frequency of the wave. So you see this, this wave, the frequency is like how many times it happens per second, I guess. I don't know. And that depends on like how short it is.
How many peaks or troughs every second?
Yeah. So basically, if we're trying to plot this sound wave of Kanye's voice, so what we're gonna do is figure out, okay, what's the interval? How many like intervals do we need to get an accurate pinpoint on each segment of this line? Because it's basically a line. It's like, how many different pinpoints on the line do we need to get so that it sounds like Kanye and it's not too lossless, like we don't lose too much of Kanye's voice. So we got to get a fuckload of these points. And so the way they determine this, whenever you see like 44 hertz, if you're super into audio, that's like, okay, there's 44,000 different samples that they're taking per second of where on this chart is the actual point. So you're getting a fuckload of these. Pop.
I never knew that.
It's fantastic. And then you ever hear bit depth? Like 16
thousand.
I don't know. There's 16 or no, it's like 16, then like 24, 26. Bit depth is like the Y version. It's like how many different intervals do you want on the Y axis? Because say you just had 2 points, it's either like here or there. That doesn't give you much information. This is kind of hard to say, but like how specific do you have to get? So if something like a CD, back in the day they had CDs, that's like a 16 bit depth. Is it BP? 16 BP? Bit
or kilobits
depth.
per
BD?
second. I'm not sure.
I don't know, but basically that says on the Y, like how specific do you want to get? And so if you see something that's like 24, then it's super specific. But all it's doing is charting it. And then you get all these numbers, like the exact pinpoint that it is. And you turn that point into a 1-0 code. So you're taking all this information. Now it's just a bunch of ones and zeros for where all these points are on this wavelength. And then you ship it out, like you send it along a wire to the codec. And codec, if you ever hear that, it's like coding, decoding. So it's just like code.
Wow.
Codec.
Wow.
So that's what that little instrument is. It's just coding, decoding really fast. And then it sends that out with the little fucking drum looking thing. I forget what they call it, that creates the pressure waves. It's like, okay, that's sick. I roughly, you as the 5-year-old, do you like roughly
Well,
Does
you
that
lost
kind
me
of
at
make sense?
the drum thing. The last thing you said that you glossed
What's
over.
like you see on a speaker? It's like, I don't know, it's just sending out waves, or like the high pressure
part of the speaker that's like doing that.
like
Literally,
that's
the
what's
speaker?
actually sending out the waves. Yeah, like the speaker.
Yeah, and what it's doing is amplifying what's coming through the wires. So you're taking these
Right.
little tiny wires, put that into an amplifier, a speaker, and that's the thing you can actually see moving, creating pressure waves. Got you, pop.
And so yeah, somehow it takes the like
subwoofer, I think,
the
is
line
kind of what you're
and
talking
converts
about.
that. Something like that, but it's got them in mini in the headphones. But okay, so I'm like, all right, that roughly makes sense to me. How you take sound, send it somewhere else, and then recreate it. Like that kind of makes sense. But how do you do this over the air? That was the brilliant part about AirPods, is they use Bluetooth. It's like, okay, how the fuck Bluetooth work? I gotta learn how Bluetooth works.
Oh,
So it's like, okay,
wait, I'm gonna leave
Bluetooth.
one before you go into Bluetooth. On the Kanye note, I'm gonna leave one thing. Hopefully, a commenter knows because I still don't. But one thing that's confusing is, especially when we talk about MIDI instruments, which is like you can play on a keyboard and get all the sounds of synthesizers, saxophones, trumpets, all these things. It's like, how do those ones and zeros sound like Kanye? How do they know to like maintain what is Kanye's voice? I know it has to do with
what is Kanye's voice. Kanye's voice is just a certain looking wavelength, like certain different pressures. And
yeah, but I mean like the tone of Kanye's voice specifically.
Well, I'm guessing that's like, say he sounds really high pitched, then what? It's like a bunch really close together.
But it's more than that. Like, what's
waves.
raspiness?
I don't
Hey, that's
like
not
know
for a
how it
5-year-old.
breaks down into the
It's
sound
not
wave.
for a 5-year-old.
But every sound translates into a sound wave. Like you just shape it differently. You compress, like you put more close together. You make them bigger. I don't really know how the fuck it works, but it's something like every sound can convert to a wave. Okay, so now we want to send these waves, but instead of sending them over wire, we want to send them through the air. It's like, oh, that's kind of cool. Like we hear radio waves. How the fuck does that work? Well, it's just these big waves going all the time, but we can't interpret them because our brains aren't like cut out for that. But radios can pick them up. So Bluetooth is this certain band of wavelength, which is like, I don't know, take an iPhone. That's like the size of the wave. It's just got a bunch of like iPhones stacked next to each other. So I was going to do it in like another analogy, like dick size, but it's iPhone size, I guess.
I bet you were.
Sorry guys.
I bet you were. I bet you
I
were.
wanted to make it PC, and then I reverted back. But
you did it anyway. But you didn't commit.
That's
oops.
That's the worst case scenario. It's like used to ride dirt bikes back in the day. There's a big jump. You either got to go full blown or just not at all. And a couple times I'd go halfy and then fucking eat it. And it's like,
oops.
Well, what were you expecting? Or like you're on a ski jump and you land on the top. Like you don't commit, so you don't get like the smooth landing. You just hit the fucking top. I just hit the top and it wasn't fun. But hey, it's the size of an iPhone, right? So that's the wavelength. We can't interpret that. Like our brains don't process it, but we designed AirPods to. So it's also like if you look at the spectrum, you have microwaves are right before it, and then it goes Bluetooth, and then radio waves after. So it's like microwaves are a little bit shorter. I don't know, shorter than that. Then radio waves are longer. That's why you can send them out into the fucking space, because radio waves are super long. And also like Bluetooth uses the same shit as your microwave or Wi-Fi. It's like roughly in that range too. That's why if you put your phone and don't turn on your microwave, but you put your phone in the microwave and try and play your AirPods, it won't work because the microwave's designed to block out that rough wavelength. So, okay, we basically realized this is a nice part of the spectrum. We're going to fuck with this part of the spectrum. We like it. Okay, so what happens? You have all this information, and how do we convey a 1 or a 0 in Bluetooth waves?
My guess is you toggle it on and off. You like pulse the Bluetooth, but very, very quickly.
Yeah, I'm going to pretend I remember, and that's probably it. It was the
What?
first thing I learned. Well,
This is important.
Yeah, I'm gonna.
It's how does this stuff like travel silently through the ether, and then your AirPod can decipher ones and zeros when it picks up the Bluetooth.
Oh no, I'm stupid.
Oh, it's
Okay,
at
I
a
just had
certain
to think about
frequency.
it for a second. No, okay, so this is how it works. Basically, there are two different frequencies. It sets one frequency as a 1 and another as a 0. It's like, okay, if this frequency comes in, it's a 1. If that one comes in, it's a 0. And so they have that for this range. But then like, okay, if there's just like one Bluetooth range, how come if I'm in a room with Belky listening to AirPods and I'm listening to AirPods, it doesn't get all fucked up? It's like, okay, that's a problem. Let's avoid that. And it takes this Bluetooth range and it splits it into 79 different little sub ranges. So now if you're booing in a room with a bunch of people, you could probably be with like 79 people and not have a problem. But it makes it even crazier where they're like, okay, say we're sending out all these ones and zeros, which we already talked about before. We're not only going to like pick a channel and stick to it. Like if you're talking on walkie talkies, it's like a super walkie talkie where your phone is telling your AirPods, hey, we don't want people like hacking into our signal and like hearing what we're talking about. So let's switch channels like all the time, really fast. So it's just constantly switching, and it's like telling your AirPods, here's our dance routine. This is what we're going to switch to. This is like our next sequence of channels that we're going to keep jumping in between. And that way too, it can
and
like
it's encrypted.
be,
or something.
this channel's really busy. Let's just avoid that channel, and it just hops between them. It's that way you can't really hack into people's Bluetooth and understand. And so it's emitting. Your phone is shooting out 1 million of these little ones or zeros every single second in Bluetooth. And so when it sends it, it's also kind of cool too, because it's like when you're pairing your iPhone to your AirPods, what you're doing is like basically every message you send will now have an access code that only your AirPods know. So it's like, oh, here's the key. And then here's like this little header. This is what this information is.
God,
and then it gives you like a fuckload of ones or zeros. That's the actual information.
I love that so
just
much.
Shooting a bunch of little packages all the time.
Did you know
brilliant.
Car key fob is radio waves? It might even be Bluetooth sometimes. Same thing, same kind of thing. You hit your key fob and it sends a fuck ton of ones and zeros to your car. The car has, actually they're on a random scrambler, and your car can receive the exact same codes, match them, and be like, all right, we can unlock. That was the key fob. And it's scrambling all the time. It's so for a non-techie like us, Pop.
I know we just get the superficial tech where like we don't really have to understand it. But hey, I want to shout out before I get, Branch Education is the channel I saw with this. It's like the most phenomenal animations, all for free, just deep down the rabbit hole of all of this. And I'm like, oh my God, I was obsessed. I'm like angry when I had to shoot a podcast because I'm like, oh, I just want to learn more. But then I got to pretend to teach.
You could get up a little earlier. Shooting.
Parkinson's? I could, but I was really enjoying my president's podcast. That was really nice. It was good. Okay, so we now have all the ones and zeros, which are the wavelengths. We're shooting them over via Bluetooth, and then the AirPods pick them up. What's kind of crazy too is when you think about AirPods, it's not like headphones in the olden days where it's just like taking the signal and then reproducing it so you can hear it. You can talk on a phone. Like you could use these AirPods for this podcast. So it's a two-way street. It's like, oh, it's going to receive and send, which I'm like, how the fuck do you fit it in this little thing? And I'm always angry at like AirPods and just this technology we take for granted. But I'm like, it's fucking absurd.
This is
how they
great.
Pack it all in and sell it for nothing.
Same thing with taxes. You go down a rabbit hole and we just become way more grateful for all the little things we complain about every day. Like the AirPods not connecting. No wonder they don't connect. They're on 79 channels blasting 1 million messages a second trying to talk to one another.
Right. We're like, how come it can't switch to my Mac when I want it to? And it's like, what?
Relax.
Hey, do you know, you want some history? Do you know where the name Bluetooth came from?
Oh, I like that. Blue, I'm going to take a stab. It has something to do with the spectrum it's on. Something about like the visible light. Maybe they thought it was similar to blue at first. Tooth, got no idea.
It's a lot more literal than you think. Viking King, back 1,000 years ago, the dude, they called him Bluetooth because he had a little Bluetooth. What he did was he was a badass and he just took Scandinavia and it was like, let's call it Norway and Denmark. And he united them. So these nerds back in like 1996, they're like, oh, what we're trying to do is unite the computer with the phone via Bluetooth. So like, oh, that's kind of nice. But what's funnier is they like codenamed it Bluetooth internally, but they wanted to preach it to the world as like radio wire or PAN, which is like personal area networking. But everyone's like, yo, Bluetooth is a lot doper name. I like the sound of that. So we're going to run with that. And it just took over. And then that little Bluetooth symbol, it's like, what the fuck is that? Well, that's the actual king, Harold Bluetooth. Like that was his initials. They just combined his initials into that little symbol. Like, oh, that's what the fuck the little.
But I got to look for it. Oh.
Like it looks like a
that
B.
It's like a triangle B.
Yeah. Somehow that is Bluetooth, just like combining symbols.
That's sick, dude.
Yeah,
is AirDrop Bluetooth? Oh. I think AirDrop's Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, which you said are the same thing.
Oh, don't make me get into that rabbit hole next week.
Wasn't I supposed to come back and explain the toilet this week? That was my contribution.
Do you know how it works?
What was I supposed to do? That was actually 2 weeks ago because we lost the schedule. You said I had to come back and elaborate on something, so probably not gonna
not gonna today, not gonna any day. But hopefully that helps everyone understand why the fuck they make so much money, because they're packing all that technology into little.
Let me give you an explain it like I'm 5. How about that? To rap like we do. 10%. 10% noise cancellation. Here's what's going on.
Oh, I was gonna do that and I forgot. Good thing you
got
said.
it, baby. You got your AirPods got a little speaker. Any noise cancellation does. There's passive noise cancellation, which is just like putting big ass, like, you know those kids that are in concerts and they're too loud? Those just like big ass 3M headphones.
Stop the noises.
That's passive.
That's an inside joke that only I get. That's how inside it is. There's
Sounds
Jack
like
Hall.
middle school.
He'll get that joke.
Yep, okay, Jack Hall, you're welcome. That's passive noise cancellation. Things got really cool like 3 to 5 years ago when we figured out active noise cancellation. And what that means is your AirPods are listening to your seascape, to your environment around you. And they're getting those signals coming in, those waveforms coming in your ear, like Pop described. And then the software, the techies, all they have to do, it's actually kind of brilliant once you know, they just invert that sound wave. They just flip it upside down. And they start playing in your little eardrum, the inverse of the wave coming into your ear from your environment. And it cancels right out. The peaks and troughs cancel right out.
The craziest thing is like, okay, if you're just listening with your AirPods, you can cancel. But if you want to play music on top of that, I don't know how the science works, but they slap together the inverse wave, that anti-wave, plus the wave of Kanye.
Oh.
And all you get is Kanye. Because the anti-waves cancel out. But it's like I don't know how the math works. It's fucking crazy.
Wow. Well, there you go. I think Bose invented that. Active noise canceling.
Hell yeah, Bose. And
but I wouldn't know.
Now they're losing out to AirPods. Hey, we got a new creator who is in a P. I don't know, but they just subscribed to Clip.
In a P, baby. In a P.
All right, that's all we got.
I have no idea who that is.
If you want video editors, we got them. Apparently, we sell while we sleep.
Clipped.co, baby. Gardaloo.